Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And well, it looks like another Xbox game might have leaked online. Yes, it does look like Xbox has several big partnerships in development, and it does look like we got a small bit of information on an upcoming Xbox exclusive, so we'll go over all that today. And then we also have Nintendo, and as we all kind of know, the Nintendo Switch has just been a major success for Nintendo in recent years. With that said though, unfortunately, it does appear that both the 3DS and the Wii U are quickly on their way out. Yeah, we're not getting great signs in terms of the Wii U and the 3DS longevity here, and I'll explain exactly why here in just a bit. To start this week off though, I actually have some good news because a couple big games are releasing this week and reviews are starting to roll out now. And that's for Flight Simulator that's heading over to the Xbox Series, and then Neo: The World Ends With You, which releases for the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 4. First though, let's kind of focus on Flight Simulator. I know Xbox fans have been waiting for this game for what feels like forever. Of course, Flight Simulator did release on PC last year, and it was an extraordinary release. And well, the wait for the Xbox Series version seems to be well worth it. Flight Simulator soars onto the Xbox Series with a 92 overall score on Metacritic, which is actually tied for the best rated next-generation release so far. The only other next-generation game that's released this generation with a 92 overall score would be Demon's Souls for the PlayStation 5. So this is just a fantastic launch for both Eshop as well as Xbox. Clearly this is a very high-quality game, and I mean, just look at the visuals in this game. Critics once again are praising its photorealistic graphics, and even if this is not a game that you necessarily are super interested in, it might be worth a download just to kind of soak in all of the beauty to this game. It just looks so fantastic, and I think this is really the first time that we're seeing like true next generation visuals. Now, as for Neo: The World Ends With You, this is a highly anticipated JRPG that fans have been waiting for years and years as well. The World Ends With You launched way back in 2007, and fans have been wanting a sequel ever since, and it's finally here. And well, it has an 81 overall score on Metacritic. So it appears that Square Enix did a good job with the sequel to The World Ends With You, and the story seems to be the real highlight with this game, though it does sound like the transition from the dual screen combat to a more traditional style worked out really well. So if you did like the first game, definitely check out the sequel, and even if you didn't check out the first game, I still recommend getting the sequel because I do expect this to be a real high quality JRPG release. Moving on, we got a very welcome update for Death Stranding. One question that has really just been consistent within the community is just how successful was this game really? Death Stranding was this big AAA PlayStation 4 exclusive, and there was a lot of hype for this game because this was Hideo Kojima's first big game since leaving Konami. I mean, Hideo Kojima, of course, is this legendary developer, and he's just so beloved within the community for working on games like Metal Gear Solid throughout the years. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of expectations with Death Stranding, though when it eventually did release, it was kind of different than what people were expecting. You can kind of explain Death Stranding as a bit of a walking simulator, and it just ended up becoming this real polarizing release. A lot of people loved this game and felt it was Game of the Year material, and then there was this other side of the community that felt it was pretentious and boring. So yes, ultimately, Death Stranding became a very polarizing release among both fans and critics alike. And then to just kind of top things off, this was actually one of the first big PlayStation published games that ended up coming to the PC as well. And for a lot of fans, they started to speculate that maybe that was because Death Stranding didn't sell as well as PlayStation had hoped for. And well, after a couple years of waiting, we did finally get our answer on how well this game actually has done, and it's actually doing pretty well in the market as it's now sold 5 million units across the PlayStation 4 and PC as of March of 2021. So that's actually pretty good for Hideo Kojima's first game since leaving Konami. So big congrats to him, and really, you're just going to see this game get an even bigger boost once the director's cut releases this September. So kudos to Hideo Kojima for his first successful release since leaving Konami. I know that's got to just feel absolutely fantastic for him. Now, I don't know exactly what PlayStation's expectations were with Death Stranding, but 5 million units sold for a new IP, that is pretty impressive, and it just kind of goes to show you not only Hideo Kojima's brilliance, but also just how much fans get excited for his new games. And that is something that I'm actually really excited about, because I think following Hideo Kojima in this part of his career is going to be really exciting moving forward. He has complete freedom right now, and with the amount of creativity that you see from him, it's really hard to tell what he will come up with next. Now, there is this rumor going around that he's possibly working with Xbox right now on some cloud-based game. And again, with the amount of creativity that he has, and we kind of see that over and over again, yeah, it could be a real special release when we do eventually see that. Regardless of what happens, though, I'm always going to be excited to see what Hideo Kojima does next, and I'm really happy to see him be successful with Death Stranding. Now, speaking of Xbox partnerships, it just seems like this generation, Xbox is just going all out. First off, you have Xbox Game Pass, which is easily the best deal in all of gaming. And then they went out and acquired studio after studio, including Bethesda, which has put them up to 23 total studios, which that most certainly will pay off going forward. But then apparently they're also signing some big partnerships as well. And this is something that we've been kind of hearing about in the background. Over at E3, they did announce a partnership with Avalanche to work on Contraband, which, while we don't really know much about that game, it's interesting just because of who's working on it. Avalanche is working on this game, which has worked on some big AAA games in the past, including Just Cause. So that is an intriguing game all on its own right there, but that appears to be far from their only big partnership going forward. Yeah, we just kind of talked about it, but yes, Hideo Kojima is rumored to be working with Xbox on some cloud-based game in the future. That one seems to be a pretty for sure rumor right now, but then you also have IO Interactive apparently working on some Dragon-related game. Now, this is coming from Jeff Grubb, and he's talked about this Dragon-related game on multiple occasions, and he did kind of drop a few more details this weekend over on Destin's YouTube channel. Now, he was just kind of clearing up some rumors that he'd been talking about in the past, and then he briefly touched up on these Dragon games, and yes, I did say games as in plural. Yes, apparently Microsoft is working on 2 Dragon-related titles. Now, one of these are coming from IO Interactive, which is incredibly exciting because this is a very talented studio. IO Interactive is the studio behind the Hitman franchise, which is debatably some of the best stealth-based games of all time. So hearing that IO Interactive is working on an Xbox exclusive is surely going to get a lot of people excited, but they're going into a different direction with this game because apparently it is a fantasy-related game that has dragons in it, and now Jeff Grubb is explaining it as kind of a Destiny style of game. Last time we heard about this game, it did sound like that it could possibly be an MMO-style experience, but here Jeff Grubb is saying that it is similar to something like Destiny. So that definitely is very different for an IO Interactive title, but I'll be very curious to see what they can do in a genre like this. I guess one of the reasons that there was some belief that this game could be an MMO last time we heard about it, though, is because apparently Microsoft actually is working on another Dragon-related title that, yes, is an MMO, or kind of an MMO based off what Jeff Grubb is saying. Now, that's pretty much the only thing that we know about this game so far, but yes, it does look like Microsoft is working on an MMO style of game that has dragons in it, and you know what, with all these Dragon-related titles, hey, Microsoft, how about maybe we could try to bring back Scalebound? I don't know what it is about that game, but I always thought that game looked pretty cool. I really wouldn't mind Scalebound returning in the future, but I know the chances of that is probably slim to none. Nonetheless, though, it does look like Microsoft has quite a few exciting partnerships in development, whether that be from Hideo Kojima, IO Interactive, they have an Avalanche game in development, and who knows what else they're working on. All I know, though, is it just seems like they are working on a lot of games, even outside of their 23 total studios. I really think the output for Xbox this generation is just going to be insane when we start to look back on things. Let me know, though, are you excited about any of these upcoming rumored partnerships? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about Nintendo, though, and this is something that we actually did brush up a little bit on last week. It does appear that Nintendo might be winding down the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShop. Obviously, this is not the ideal situation in any shape or form, but Nintendo Japan did announce last week that they would no longer support the option to purchase eShop titles with a credit card. Now, you can still get those Nintendo prepaid cards, and this is really only a Japan thing right now, but it's not exactly a great sign for the rest of the world either. And then to just kind of add to that, there's now a new report going around thanks to the YouTuber by the name of Impact Game Station, in which he received a message noting that Nintendo will cease the acceptance of submissions for new Nintendo 3DS and Wii U titles for eShop release by the end of the current fiscal year, effective from the 1st of April of 2022. This message is supposedly coming from Nintendo of Europe, but once again, if this is true, it does look like Nintendo might be winding down the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShop sometime in 2022. We could just see them just go away from these eShops moving forward, and that could be a major deal for the Nintendo community. The 3DS is a pretty successful console, and it's got a great virtual console on it if you have the new 3DS. You have the ability to play games like Earthbound on there, or Zelda Oracle of Ages, or Oracle of Time. These games, alongside several others, are available to play on the new 3DS digitally, and then you have the Wii U, which has a large catalog of virtual console games as well. I mean, just looking at that Metroid Dread release right now, there's a lot of interest in the Metroid franchise, and the one really good way to play a lot of these Metroid games are actually playing them digitally on the Wii U. You can play Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Fusion, and the Metroid Prime Trilogy all digitally on the Wii U. And the only other way to play these games legally is to buy old retro copies of them, which are incredibly expensive by this point. So that's one of the reasons that having the Wii U and 3DS eShop around is just so ideal right now, because as of this moment, Nintendo has not brought these games over to the Nintendo Switch. Now, why Nintendo hasn't brought these games over to the Switch yet is really beyond me, but regardless, it is starting to sound like Nintendo might be going away from the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U eShop going forward, maybe sometime in 2022. So if there is any games that you want digitally on either one of these platforms, you might want to start picking them up now while you have the chance. We kind of saw what happened earlier this year with the PlayStation Vita and the PlayStation 3, and there was a lot of controversy over those. But once these digital eShops do go away, prices for physical games are dramatically going to increase. So you might want to look into getting these games cheaper while you can, rather than more expensive later on. I mean, for that matter, you can kind of look at some of the digital Atlas games over on the 3DS. These games are a little bit harder to get physically, and they're really expensive, whereas you can just pick them up cheap digitally, and just kind of keep that in mind going forward. Again, though, do keep in mind that none of this is confirmed as of this moment, and a lot of this is just simply speculation. Personally, I really hope that they keep the 3DS and the Wii U eShop alive for as long as they possibly can. Moving on, though, we got one last topic, and we'll kind of go over this one real quick, but it appears that Dead Space remake might be able to have a few of the inclusions that maybe the original wanted to, but possibly couldn't because of technical limitations. So this was spotted over by the Video Game Chronicles, but in an interview with IGN, the creative director did have this to say. We started with the original level design of the original Dead Space. What's funny is that you can see some of the iterations that were made prior to ship by the team. In the first chapter, you can see some corridors that they wanted to do first in a certain way, and then you can understand why they changed it for technical constraints or some other reason. Then in terms of visuals, sound, gameplay, everything, we were rebuilding all of these assets. We are not porting them. It's not up-resing the texture or adding more polygons to the model. It's really rebuilding all these elements, shooting all the animations, etc. So based off of that comment, it does sound like, yes, because they are completely rebuilding all these assets, they might be able to even include some of the cut content that was planned for the original release. And that is one of the big positives with a remake such as this. While they've already publicly stated that they will stay faithful to the original, which I'm really happy about, by the way, because the original was just a fantastic horror experience, they could still make some improvements here and there with just, much better hardware this time. They can add things that was originally cut from the first game, or they can add some nice quality of life improvements. I mean, obviously, we're going to get a major improvement in terms of visuals and sound design and all that, but, they can also do some things to really take advantage of the new hardware in terms of level design and game design. So I am very intrigued by this statement here, and it almost seems like they're hinting that, yeah, they could add some content that was originally cut in that original release. Regardless, I'm very excited for this Dead Space remake. Let's take a look at the poll of the day, though, and last week, an analyst predicted that the Nintendo Switch could possibly end up selling 155 million units lifetime. And if that were to happen, then the Nintendo Switch would be the best-selling console of all time, surpassing the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo DS. So this would be a huge, just massive achievement by Nintendo. So I thought I'd ask you all and see if you all agree with this prediction. And well, you all surprised me here, and 72% of you did say that yes, you believe the Nintendo Switch can sell 155 million units lifetime. So you all seem very optimistic here. And as I said last week, I do think there's a chance that this could happen. I mean, a lot of things could happen in the next 4 or so years, but based off the current momentum of the Nintendo Switch, yeah, I could see it selling up to 155 million units. The Nintendo Switch has just been insane, with month in and month out of just selling incredible numbers. And I just think that, even if we look at the next year or so, there's a lot of great games coming, whether that be Metroid, you have a couple new Pokemon games, you have Splatoon 2, and then Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. There's a lot of big releases here that will, of course, push a lot of consoles. But then you also have to take in consideration the Nintendo Switch OLED. No, it's not necessarily the Switch Pro that a lot of hardcore gamers really wanted, but I still think the Switch OLED is going to push a lot of units. This same analyst believes that the Switch OLED will sell 5 million units by the end of 2021, and I do think that that is very possible. Not only is this thing going to draw some attention from people who don't currently own the Nintendo Switch, but there's going to be people that rebuy it as well. No, not as many people would rebuy it as maybe the Switch Pro with the 4K resolution and all that, but people who primarily do play in handheld mode, yeah, I do think that there's going to be a number of people that double dip with the Switch OLED. But yeah, I do think the Nintendo Switch will have easily surpassed 100 million units sold by the end of this year, and it'll probably be closer to around 110 million units sold. And then after that, really, if it sells about 20 million plus units for the next 2 years, it's going to come really close to that 155 million total units sold lifetime. We'll kind of see what happens with all this, but like I said before, if there's one console that has a chance of doing this, yeah, it's definitely the Nintendo Switch. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.